Welcome, everybody, to Congregation Va-Dor's Touch of Torah. And tonight is November 15th. We're midway through November, and we are going to be talking about the parasha in Genesis called Chayyei Sarah, the life of Sarah, the wife of Abraham, of course, or Avram. And take it away, Rabbi.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It's great to be here. The name of the passage, the Sedra Chayyei Sarah, is kind of interesting. The word for life in Hebrew, it's chai. People wear a chai around their neck, but it's also chayim, as in when you say l'chayim. And chayim is actually plural. So when it says the life of, in Hebrew, when you use a plural noun, it's chayyei. It ends in a. So they use the chayim. It sounds kind of like lives of Sarah, but it's Chayyei Sarah, translated as life of Sarah. But you could say that Sarah, because she lived 127 years, it's almost as if she had more than one lifetime. And it's rather peculiar. It says she lived 7 years plus 20 years plus 100 years. And as some people have speculated, well, why is that? The real reason is that's just how Hebrew was back then. That's how they formulated. But of course, the rabbis find a reason for everything. So what that means to them is that she was like she was when she was 7. When she was a child, she was joyous and energetic and had curiosity for life, and she was full of energy. And so she was like a 7-year-old. And she was also like a 20-year-old. She was full of passion, and she was beautiful, and she was a wonderful wife. And then she also was like a 100-year-old, and that she also had wisdom. So she combined all the features of different stages of life, which is it's an interesting way of looking at things, and it does have an important lesson for us. The Orthodox also come up with another lesson, which is far more far-fetched, and it's usually the one that they gravitate towards when they're talking about this particular passage. If you go look on the internet, and you look up Chayyei Sarah, and then you see the commentaries on it, and you look at the Orthodox ones. The most common one is one where it says that it's called the life of Sarah, but it describes instantly she lived 27 years, and then she died. So it's not really talking about her life at all. They just mention her age, and then it says she died. So why would that be? So, of course, they speculate. There's nothing in the Torah, so they create what they call midrash, which is just people making things up out of thin air. The midrash is that when Sarah heard that Abraham was going to sacrifice her son, or almost did, they came back. He comes back with Isaac, and when she heard what happened, she was so shocked that she died on the spot of shock. That's a little far-fetched. I mean, first of all, it's not in the text, but also if Abraham returned with Isaac, then her first reaction would have been joy to see her son who had been gone for a while, and she would have said, hey, welcome back, and she would have been happy. And then if Isaac said, or if Abraham said, oh, by the way, let me just tell you what happened. It was a pretty interesting experience. God asked me to sacrifice our son, and I held a knife up to his throat. Most women wouldn't be shocked and outraged. They'd be furious and angry and mad. They wouldn't have died on the spot. They would have stuck around long enough to start telling the husband exactly what they thought and shared their righteous indignation. So, she wouldn't have been horrified because she would have seen that he survived the ordeal. She probably would have just been mad. But anyway, the Orthodox suggests that that's the reason. And then they say, well, why would that be? Why would she be so shocked? And of course, they don't notice that she's 127 years old. I mean, it's not that unusual that someone at 127 years old dies. But no, there's got to be a different reason for that. So what some of the rabbis speculate is that Sarah was teaching God a lesson. She was saying to God, hey, you know what? You really have it in for us Jewish people. You hold us to a higher standard and you subject us to all types of tests and tribulations. But this is just too much. I mean, asking us to sacrifice our children and ordering someone to hold a knife to the throat of the child, that's just too much. And so she died kind of like a protest to show that this is wrong. You shouldn't ask so much of the Jewish people. And some people have used that also to suggest that God should not have subjected the people to all these horrible things, including the Inquisition, the Crusades, the Holocaust. And so that's the other lesson. That's usually the main thrust of what is gleaned from Chayyei Sarah. I gravitate instantly towards a completely different part of the passage, which I find very enlightening. So Abraham and Sarah want to find a wife for Isaac. So they entrust their servant, Eliezer, and they said, Eliezer, don't find a woman from among the Canaanites here. It's like one of the first examples of xenophobia, or we don't want to marry outside of our group. Go back to where I came from. Go back to Mesopotamia, the land of Ur, and my kinsmen, and find someone there. So he says to Abraham, okay, I'll go back, but it's kind of a big place. Like, how will I know which person to choose for the wife of Isaac? So he instructs Elazar, when you get there, ask the women at the well for some water because you're thirsty. And if a woman replies, I will certainly bring you water, but also let me get water for your camels. They must be thirsty too. If you hear that reply, that's the one. That's the proper wife for Isaac. And if she doesn't respond that way, and you don't find someone saying that, you're released of your vow, just come back and just consider it a noble effort. And lo and behold, he goes and he asks, and Rebecca has a jug of water on her shoulder, and she says exactly what was preordained. Yes, let me get you water. Let me get water for your camel. She rushes off. She runs over. She fills up the jug, gets everybody water. They're all replenished. And then she invites Elazar back to her family. And then the rest is history. They live happily ever after. The lesson that I like to share from this passage is that our ancestors believed that what makes somebody a suitable spouse for the firstborn Jew, first Jew who is born a Jew, Isaac, is not reading passages or intellectual pursuits or putting on ritual garb. It's kindness towards animals. If you're kind to animals, you have a good heart, a good neshama. You have rahmanas, you have compassion. And it was Gandhi who said, you can judge a society by how it treats its animals. And apparently Abraham thought that you could judge a woman by how she treats animals as well. And so she passed the test with flying colors. And so Rebecca was chosen to be his wife. So that's the main significance of the passage. There's also part of it here where Abraham purchases a burial place for Sarah in the cave of Machpelah. And that's on the West Bank. And then other patriarchs and matriarchs were buried there also. He bought the land from a Hittite, fair and square. He bargained, he negotiated. And so that particular site is considered a holy site by the Orthodox. And that whole area of the West Bank and Hebron is considered sacred ground because of the burial site located there. And if anybody says, hey, you Jews don't belong there, they point to the Torah and they say, hey, here it is. Look, he paid for it fair and square. He actually paid a pretty high price for it. There's a lot of negotiations involved, and he ended up paying quite a high price because he just wanted to make sure that he would be able to bury his wife in the Holy Land. So that's what I wanted to share with you today about the passage